Hello. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm grateful to Terry for the invitation. All this started a couple of years ago when I ended my tenure as ambassador to the U.S. A friend of mine at Princeton University asked me to give a talk to sort of give my vision of what happened and then looking to the future in terms of Iraqi-American relationships. And he thought I'd be talking about ISIS and the Task Forces Agreement. And I said, no, I would like to talk about, okay, I'll talk about three topics that I think are obvious, and some of you have addressed them, but they don't get addressed enough, and they are concerning: demography, climate change, and water scarcity. And I came back to Baghdad a couple of years ago, and I've been working as climate envoy for the last 2 years. And I think I was right. These issues are still paramount and not given the shrift they should be given, because they are vital and vitally important. In terms of demography, if you look at Iraq, when I was growing up, our population was about 8 million. We are now 40, we just conducted a census, and we're 45 million. And that's not counting the Iraqi diaspora. And our birth rates are growing. And just as a personal note, my mother was a sociologist, and she was involved in educating poor women on family planning. The idea was that at the time, if they had smaller families, they could devote more time to each child and get better. And that was stopped by Saddam Hussein, because he had heard that at the time of the Abbasids, Iraq had a population of 40 million, and I think he wanted soldiers, so the program was stopped, and here we are, 40 million. And the birth rate doesn't seem to be going down. Not only that, but this population has shifted. It used to be mostly rural, with all that implies in terms of agricultural productivity. It's now essentially urban. And urban because that is where government jobs are. And that has been facilitated, as you can imagine, by the fact that we're an oil-producing country, and so we have an economy that is entirely based on oil. Another set of numbers that I'd like to give you have to do with the number of date palms we have in Iraq. So again, when I was growing up, the common wisdom was that we had 30 to 40 million date palms, so it made every Iraqi the proud proprietor, theoretically, of 4 or 5 date palms, and you'll never go hungry because of the wars, mostly, but also because of the other topic that I want to talk about. That's water scarcity. We're at one point down to 8 million. Things are going a little better now, but that's a clear marker of the trends that you should avoid. On water scarcity, of course, there are 3 reasons that we have for this. All this implies that we have to look again at the issue of water. We have to revise the way in which we do agriculture. I tell people that, you know, Iraq is where agriculture was invented, but in fact, if we want to pursue agriculture, we have to reinvent it. We can't do, you know, flood irrigation anymore. And water scarcity is also responsible in part, but not only in part, for increasing levels of desertification. We're losing about 250 square kilometers of land to desertification every year. And the other factor that plays into this is, of course, climate change. And climate change is a reality in Iraq. It's a reality here. As you may know, people have begun adapting to it. And I need not remind you of what happened at the pilgrimage this year with 1,300 victims, I guess, because of the heat. But climate change is a serious concern for this part of the world. Even if the world were able to achieve what it plans to achieve, what it hopes to achieve, which is to abide by the Paris limits, which is an increase in temperature of 1.5 degrees. Please remember that 1.5 is just an average, and in our part of the world, it'll be a multiple of that. And so heat waves like we've seen in Baghdad or in this part of the world, where you have several days in succession of temperatures exceeding 50 degrees centigrade, are going to be the norm, perhaps not the exception. And it's all the more important in cities like Abu Dhabi and Dubai and the cities that are on the periphery of the Gulf, because of what it will do to the wet bulb temperature. The wet bulb temperature is the heat equivalent of the wind chill factor. I'm a skier, so I know all about the wind chill factor. And with wet bulb temperature reaching 35 degrees, you can't stay outside for more than 6 hours. You would die. You won't be able to regulate your own temperature. And so we're heading towards that, and people have begun paying attention. Oil companies, for example, now have defined this term of purple flag days, where they raise the purple flag and they prevent their staffers from going outside because they can't guarantee their safety. NATO, for example, in Iraq has developed this concept of not purple, but black flag days, where they won't send their soldiers out, not only because they can't send them out, but also because helicopters won't fly as readily when the temperature is as high. Add to it the fact that we might even get a rise in sea levels. And so, for example, if you want to build a hospital, say in Basra, hospitals are supposed to last 30, 40, 50 years. You can't set it up on sea level. You have to find an elevation. These are things that we really have to take into account already now. And so what's the solution? What are we to do? And I add to all this, and thank you for mentioning that earlier, is that you did, ma'am. We are an oil-producing country, and we are not only going to be being affected by climate change, we will be affected by the consequences of addressing climate change. And there is a very explicit mention of that in the Climate Change Convention. I think it's Article 4.8, you can look it up. But we have to already prepare for the changing environment. What will we do if price of oil drops way below what it is now? I think we'll be in trouble. So what's the solution? Well, I think it's a return to our sources, if you will. One of the things I always like to tell people is that when I went to visit my grandparents' home, it felt cool because they were built using, traditional vernacular architecture, okay, not concrete, which retains temperature. And I think we have to, in the end, revive our countryside and reinvent agriculture, like I said. Normally I would have said we should try to develop farming villages, nothing like kibbutzes. These are colonial structures, but I mean kolkhozes or modern farming entities that will allow us to develop an agriculture that can function in arid environments. And you can tell me more about that, I'm sure, sir, Mr. Abdullah, but the technologies to do agriculture in arid environments are very well developed, and there are countries that rely on this entirely, countries like Australia, countries like certain states in the United States, even Spain, and this very country, and Saudi Arabia. So I think we really have to look at the development of our economy beyond industrialization, revive our agriculture in ways that will allow us to adapt and become resilient. And honestly, it's better if we do it together. At the UN General Assembly last year, our Prime Minister, actually ahead of COP28, launched an appeal to the countries of the GCC and Iran to set up a negotiating group to look at how best we can, as a group, defend our interests and adapt and get the resources to adapt. And so I think that's the way forward. We have to do what we need to do on our own. but we also need to do what we can do together as one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harid. Finally speaking, you're mentioning trying to have a control over birth rates, whereby here in the UAE we created a new ministry actually last week, which is called the Ministry of Family. And the purpose behind it is to increase our birth rate, bring it back to the numbers, because these are some numbers I've looked through. Human population today is 10%, where 10% of the human population today is above 65 years old. And it's expected to be 25% only by 2080. So we're talking about 55 years from now. And
our problems are completely the opposite.
Yeah. And whereby we are globally going to face, it's already started back in the 60s, a human population drop crisis. So I guess a bigger question is, where is the young going to move to? And it's more about that than it is going to be about, how many more mouths to feed. That will be a really interesting discussion to have. But thank you very much for bringing that in.